Hello,
Hi.
and welcome to the 10 pointers in the seventh fetter. We are making this recording with the pointers. Normally, in all the other fetters, you have them at the end, but in the seventh fetter, it's important to have it here in the middle. You have just done the lower fives, and then we have the 10 pointers before we move on to the higher fives in the seventh fetter. And the seventh fetter is something out of nothing. And the reason why we need to have the pointers now is that we need to let go of all the assumptions of what reality is. Everything we have pointed to in the curriculum up until this point has been very useful and has been very important in the lesson that we pointed to it. But moving forward, we have to let go of all of that. And that's why we have the 10 pointers now. So buckle up. And let's take the first pointer.
Okay. So the first pointer is everything exists without an inherent self-nature.
Yeah.
So this is a key Buddhist concept. The idea that nothing has an inherent self-nature means nothing pops as one into this world, as a fully formed object that has a particular characteristic, trait, self-existence of its own.
Nothing is a chair.
Nothing is a chair. No, a table does not pop into existence. And at no point, it's a famous example, at no point, if you start disassembling this table, can you delineate between when it becomes a table versus wood or some other in-between state.
Yeah, if you take a full car and you pick it apart, which little screw or which little fan do you need to remove until it's just individual metal parts?
Yeah.
And if you put that back in, then it's a car.
Yeah, exactly. So, and even if you have every single piece of the car disassembled and laid out on the ground, is it still technically a car? Mm-hmm. A car has some sort of a function built into it. We have certain traits that we place on this thing that we call a car, and at that point where it's just a disassembled pile of parts, it's not really a car anymore. There's a potential for a car, but it doesn't have that inherent self-nature of a car. Everything is compounded. Everything is made of pieces. And this is important not just with the world around us, where you can see that a tree isn't even just an inherent tree. It started from either an acorn or some sort of a seed or something else that eventually grew into this thing that bears no resemblance to how it actually began. But looking at us, we walk around the world through life feeling like there's an inherent me here. And whether that inherent me is the body, which again, we can tell it's a compiled bunch of parts. We have cells and bacteria and atoms, and there's nothing structurally stable or sound or permanent in the physical form. But then what we take to be the me in all of this is, we point to all the time, a combination of thoughts and physical sensations. And there is nothing stable or inherently permanently existing within this structure that we call a me, a self. There is no Todd in here that has some sort of inherent self-nature that is always Todd. That from the time that either conception or birth happened to the time of death, that there's this idea that there is something here which is stable and consistent, like we're all born with a little golden nugget in the middle of the body, and then that just stays exactly the same, and then goes on to something else.
Yeah, it's like that okay, there's not an inherent tree. It is individual parts of leaves and branches and the trunk and the roots, and there's okay, I get that. There's no inherent car. I get that. Individual is just individual metal parts. I get that. So everything out there, there's not inherent, but there is an inherent me. Yeah. There is an inherent me.
Yeah.
The way that you can really see through that delusion is with the seventh fetter. is understanding that you're creating something out of nothing. That you understand that when you understand that there's not an inherent self nature here, you need to add something onto it, because if you close your eyes right now and you just sit and breathe, how do you know that there is an I anywhere? You would have to have thoughts about it, creating something out of nothing about it. And that is what we're trying to dissolve here in the seventh feather.
Yeah. The best thing that we can say is that anything, everything, us, the tree, the car, everything is a verb. That it's not a noun where there's a solidification of what I think is the inherent me or the inherent tree or the inherent car. It's a process of treeing and personing and carring that's happening. And so it's just this unfolding that we take and we look at a snapshot and we say, okay, that is what a tree is. This is what a pernilla is. And pernilla is always going to be like this. And it defies our expectations. So with the seventh fetter, we're really looking into, what am I expecting this moment to be? What am I expecting this person to be? Who am I expecting me to be? The car, the tree? And then recognizing any time that it belies our expectation, that it's not a fault of the system, and it's not a fault of me needing something to be different than it is. It's me having a faulty expectation that something is going to maintain permanently and stably, and carry on the function that we believe it's always supposed to have had. Because, as you said, we're putting that something out of nothing. We're making more into it than it ever had. And a car can still be a car even if it can't run. It might be a non-functioning car, but it's still a car. People change all the time. We don't want to lock them into a barrier or a cage of what they have to be and who they need to be, and this is their role in my life and all of that. That's all extra thought. That's just binding the moment and creating, trying to create a noun out of a verb.
I really love that. And it's also why that if you feel that you still do that, or if you notice that you still do that, then you have all the lessons in the lower fives to work with that. Because the lower fives is very much about that. Really seeing through that. That if you have like resistance or avoidance, or you have craving for something to be in a certain way, or if there's like just an underlying belief or a toxic starting point or a fear, anger, guilt, and shame, something like that, that really clings to, but there has to be a me, there has to be, then you have all the material, you have all the lessons where you can look into this, go in Discord, speak with the hive mind that we have in our community, and talk about these things. I also want to say, I can't remember which physicist it was that said that that time does not exist, change does. And that's another factor that we need to, if there is an inherent I here, that feeling of that what you said, that there's like that little golden nugget that is in here, and it has been like that since conception and will be there until death. And for that to be true, time has to exist. Time needs to be real. And as we're going to look on in some of the other lessons
pointers.
that later pointers, and later lessons that we're getting to, time does not exist. There's a sensation of time passing, a thought about time passing. It's not really what is happening. And what we notice is just change. But even that is happening within the confine of time.
So I think the fundamental takeaway of that pointer is to notice any time that you feel like you are, excuse me, locking things into a perspective that there is a true inherent nature to the way things are, and that inherent nature is the way you think it is or expect it to be. The tree doesn't have an inherent treeness, but it's really about your expectations of what that tree should be like, how it should be presenting, how it relates to you and what you can get out of it and all of that. And the same for in here, don't bind yourself to this idea that you have always been a certain way, so you must always be this certain way. that the other people around you have to always play out the same roles that they've always played. It's really looking into every moment that you see somebody, that is a new manifestation that you have never seen before.
Yeah.
Every moment that there is what we're calling a you in this body right now, that manifestation is brand new and fresh every moment and can't be locked down, conceptualized, or really predictable. So just really being fresh in the moment and seeing things as the constantly flowing change of experience that they are.
Yeah, exactly. Setting you free and setting everybody free to be exactly like it is in this moment without any expectation to it having to be in a certain way.
Yeah.
Yeah, love it.
All right.
Okay,
I think that's
next
enough
one.
for that one.
Next, that's enough for that one. Second pointer. Without curiosity, your mind constantly creates something out of nothing. Conclusions will be derived from uninvestigated sensations and thoughts, animate into concepts. And we do that all the time. We do that all the time. All the time we have an idea about what something is, like we just talked about, that there is no inherent nature. That is something we add onto it. And if you don't investigate it at all, then you just assume that whatever you look at right now, if you let your eyes fall on something, whatever you look at, you assume that you know what it is. Because it is within your experience, which is thoughts. It is within your concepts of what a leaf or a plant or is, whether you like it or do not like it, whether you prefer that or another one. All of that is concepts that you have created in your mind. And it's like that no matter what you look at. No matter what you address, no matter what you look at people in your life, look at Janice in the office, if you look at whatever is outside of you, you will very, very quickly see that you have created a concept about it that you have put upon it, which is not what it actually is. It's just a concept. And the mind does that all the time. And that needs to be investigated. Because when you formed those ideas about those concepts, that was in a very, very early age of your life that you did that. And you have not investigated that since. So a lot of things that you assume is the way that they are, that was an assumption that you made when you were 3, 4, 5, 7 years old. If you think about your parents, you have a certain concept about who they are, which is not setting them free to be who they are this moment. You are holding them back in a role from when you were 3 or 5 or 7, which is not who they are right now. And even if they're deceased, when you think of them, what you think of them, if you really investigate it, you can see that that concept that you have created of mother or father, that is based on old assumptions of who you think they were, not who they were. Because it's everything we do in those concepts that we create is very, very self-referential.
Yeah.
I'm here in the middle, and the way that I perceive things around me is the way that it is. But it's not, though. It's just a concept you have created, an assumption you have created about things. It's not how it actually is. And that assumption, that concept, you have put on everything. Everything is smeared with Nutella. Your concept of what it is, that's
Everything is delicious.
Of course it is. So you have like smeared that on top of everything. And that is how you see the world. But that is only your own created concept, and it needs to be investigated. Otherwise, you're living in your delusion.
Yeah, I love that. And even
The Nutella part.
mostly the Nutella part. And even when you look at, when you said pick an object in the room, even the concept that that is an object distinct from everything else in the visual field is itself this conceptual bias that decides, right now I'm looking at a plant, and where exactly does that plant end? Is it, where do I draw the boundary of every leaf, and how it is separated from the background and from the other things in view? And looking at you right now, I can see couch through these individual hairs. And it's like, what part of this gets distinguished as this is Prunella, that is couch? There has to be a distinction that's made that is cutting out one part of the visual field from the other, and just determining that one can exist without the other, as though this Prunella could exist in this form without the couch that's supporting the body. There's this idea that everything is completely, going back to the first point, or self-existing, and in its way having that it's like it's its own self-supported self-existence. It doesn't acknowledge the fact that everything is interrelated within that picture too. And so we are, every time we appeal to using concepts like that, we are not only enforcing this false sense of what something is on top of it, but we're also breaking it up unnecessarily into parts that I determine where this begins and that ends.
Yeah.
I determine the function of this thing versus that thing. And that's where we're really creating this duality and multiple dualities of absolutely everything all the time.
And it's why it needs to be investigated.
Yeah.
Why we need to investigate all of this. Question everything. Question everything. You cannot assume anything. When I look at the plant there and I assume that it is right there, straight in front of me, the sixth feather we are pointing into, it's not. It's in here. But let's just say I see it right there, the plant is right there. But that's not the angle that Todd has when he's looking at the same plant. So is the plant there, or is it there? And it's just investigate everything. You cannot assume anything, because the moment you do, you have created something out of nothing. And then even investigate what you assume that you then take it to be, because even that needs to be picked apart. The assumption of the assumption needs to be picked apart as well. The investigation of the investigation needs to take place. It needs to take place. And even that needs to drop.
Yeah, we're going to talk about this in later pointers too, but we're really getting rid of all certainty. We're getting rid of every place that you can possibly land and come down on one side of anything.
And it's because we really want you to dissolve that self-referential pointing back all the time that is happening, that ping pong that is happening with the self-referential that is happening all the time. That is the concept, and that is the belief that needs to be dissolved, that really needs to be investigated and dissolved, dropping completely. Yeah. Enough of that.
I think enough of that one. Third pointer. All beliefs are simply concepts that we have inherited from others. We did not create them. They are not personal. And they have no inherent truth outside of those who believe in their validity.
Yeah. Ooh, there are many things in that one.
Yeah.
I feel that we have at some point been sitting and saying, okay, we can only have 10.
Yeah, I know.
So make 4 into this one.
Exactly.
Cram 4 things into this one.
So
go.
First of all beliefs are simply concepts that we have inherited from others.
Yes.
We create some new conceptualizations of our own as we're going about the world, but so much of it is based off of what we have learned from our parents, from our society. The idea that we've been told that these people or these situations are good, bad, that they have a certain inherent nature to them, which is why we end up with things like all sorts of political division and prejudice and all of that, because you are taking a concept that somebody else has taught you, not really investigating it for yourself, but then painting this entire swath of people or animals or situations with this particular color that you have been taught they all should have, and then interacting with them or shunning them or having some sort of bias against them based on these concepts that you've taken on. So we really need to look into everything that we have learned, everything that we take to be the truth about any situation, person, object, anything, and question that and question, why is it that you think that you believe that this thing is the way that it is, that this person is the way that they are? Why do you feel that there is an inherent goodness in something and a badness in another, that this is better than that? We really need to look at even something as simple as, I like drinking out of this kind of glass and not that kind of glass. Well, is it really based off of a preference of, this just feels good to me? Or was I taught at some point in my life that, champagne should only be drank out of this, and
Not a mug.
not a mug, and coffee should be drank out of this, and
Not crystal.
not crystal. And so, in some of these, of course, you pour hot coffee into something and it might shatter. So there's maybe some practical value to some of them, but it's because you've been taught.
Yeah.
So just looking into everything of, why do I believe things that I believe? Why do I interact with the world the way that I do?
Yeah.
Is it actually because that is what this moment warrants and justifies, and is the natural unfolding of this process? Or is it because there's been some sort of inherent bias that has already been pre-programmed long before I've been in this particular situation?
Yeah, and it's also, it's one of those things that what I'm about to tell you now, you might reach out for a paperback first before I start to talk about it. But when you are 60 years old, you are 80% of your parents. So if you are a woman, you are 80% of your mom, and if you're a man, you are 80% of your dad. And it's because everything that you believe to be true, you have copied. You did not. You came out completely blank. You had no idea what a spoon was. That you couldn't go into the store in the pajamas. That you shouldn't sleep in jeans. That you only eat oatmeal for breakfast, not for dinner. All of those things that you have been told is something that you have been told, and you have looked to the one that you mirrored yourself in. And that is the one that you have copied. That there's great insight, and it's really, really good news to know that, because it means that you can allow yourself to see things as they really are. You do not need to just copy paste as you have. You have done it, but that is your starting point. That is the primary reaction. If I say thunderstorms, or I say Sundays, or I say any word like that, then you will immediately have a concept about what it is. Thunderstorms, ooh, that's so cozy, I love that. Oh my god, I hate that.
So dangerous.
Yeah. Sundays, oh, that's the sitting reading the newspaper and having lots of time and enjoying it. Or it's like, oh my god, no, that's time with the family. Absolutely hate it. So whatever, you can take a dictionary or anything with lots and lots of words, just randomly sit and write down words, and then you will see that you have created concepts about every single thing. And that concept that you have created is a copy paste of your conditioning, of where you come from. Yeah.
This is
did I branch out from the question?
No, I think it's in there.
Yeah. Let's can we funnel it back to beliefs?
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, this really brings us back to questioning everything, even the big ones about religion and politics, things that we get completely
gender,
yeah, things that as we're brought up, we're inculcated with these beliefs. We're just so so immersed in them that they're taught to us as truths. And at this point, we're really questioning, is there such thing as a truth? When we get to the 10th fetter, everything is up for grabs. But even here, we're starting to see that you can't survey a landscape in front of you without having a whole plethora of concepts and beliefs about it just appearing. And you cannot interact with other people being in situations in the world where you're not immediately acting out of some sort of inherent bias. I am making snap judgments all the times about the way this person is and about the way that this should be and all of that.
What you do on a Sunday, what happens when it's thunder.
Yeah, exactly. These are all just unquestioned snap judgments that are happening because you've already been indoctrinated with these beliefs to begin with. And so this is your opportunity. It's a call to really being curious and investigating the actuality of the moment without all of these inherent biases, concepts, and beliefs put on top of it. Because a belief, I just want to say, a belief, we have to remember, is not a real thing. A belief is a thought, or a very commonly occurring pattern of thought. If I believe that the the moon goes around the sun, it's a thought that if I really believe it, I have thought multiple times. And maybe I've heard other people tell me this same crazy thing that has seemed true to me. And so that belief has come in. And the more we think a thought, the more ingrained that thought becomes. The more likely it is to happen again. The more we surround it by other thoughts that support it. So our beliefs are really just a core thought that has all of these other thoughts that bolster it, that give it more substance than it really has. And we need to look into all of that it is just a thought. No matter how big and important of a topic it seems to be to you, it's still a belief. And you don't have that direct access to the truth in that moment if you're living out of a concept.
It was exactly what I wanted to say. You just said it so much better.
Oh, thanks, babe.
Because what we're moving into now is that we really want you to, because we're talking more about this in the 8th Fetter, but we really, really want you to become so aware, so clearly aware of what is a belief, what is reality, and what is a belief. Because most things that you assume to be real are not. It's just something you believe. Yeah. If you have, for example, if you believe that the earth is flat or you believe that the earth is round, both are beliefs. Both are beliefs. If you, in your direct experience right now, you do not have access to that information. That is the 10th fetter of not knowing. You do not know anything right now unless you add thought to it. And whatever thought you add to it, that will come from and previous conditioning, which might not even be yours. So it's really, really being curious and question everything. And no matter what you believe to be true, just see it as a belief. If you believe the earth is flat all round, in whichever way, just know that it is a belief. You cannot build anything on that hill. It is a belief in your direct experience. When we talk about non-duality and radical non-duality, you do not know either. You do not know if it's flat or if it's round. And if you have that, flat earthers, or you have that, round earthers, no matter what you do, that is you judging. Hang on. Yeah. Back in the lower fives with you. You've got work to do. There is an underlying belief that you say and assume is truth without even noticing what do you actually know in your direct experience right now. What do you actually know to be true? If you cannot add a thought to it, because that would be a belief, then what do you actually know to be true right now? And now we're moving into the radical non-duality. It's not really radical at all. No. It's just how it is. You're moving into the non-duality.
Maybe we should call it practical non-duality.
Practical non-duality.
It's not really radical.
It's not radical at all.
Practical in the way things, it's just direct experience. Yeah. Interacting with the world without concepts. It is super practical and super easy when you recognize that this is just something else it's added effort that you're putting on it. It's extra work.
It's something out of nothing, which you are adding to something. Yeah. Let's call it practical
non-duality.
There you go.
All right.
So the other part of this pointer, because we squeezed a lot of things into this pointer and said it's only one.
All beliefs are simply concepts that we have inherited from others. Yeah. We did not create them, and they are not personal. So just reinforcing the fact that these are things that have been given to us like gifts when we're children, and we have just held on to them. And if we don't question them, they go from gifts to just being a burden, a rock tied to our back.
Yeah. It's like the raft in the Buddhist story where you're crossing a river and you're using a raft to cross the river. It's super useful to cross the river. When you get to the other side, you leave the raft. You do not need it anymore. And it's the same with all of these concepts. As a child, it was very important that you had a strong self-identity, that you had a strong self, that you had clear boundaries. All of that were rafts that you use to get to this point where you're at right now as an adult, where you do no longer need beliefs or concepts to exist. It's actually what is pulling you down and making everything heavy and judgmental and creating so much suffering. You can let go of all of those rafts and just sit in your direct experience and notice what is actually occurring right now, and constantly question, is that true? How do you know? Is this just another belief? Is this just another concept I have created? Or is this true in my direct experience of what I'm experiencing?
Yeah, and there was still another part to this.
Yeah, of course there is.
Of course there is. And they have no inherent truth outside of those who believe in their validity.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's so important to recognize that there is a physical structure that we call a tree, but we have no direct access to what that is. We have no idea what a tree really is to the inside of the tree, to the squirrel. Yeah, like there's the thing itself that, we're not saying that nothing exists outside of the body. We're just saying that we can't get to the root of what it really is, because we're always filtering it through our own biases, through our own concepts, through our own sense filters. And so we can never really truly access anything. A belief does not exist, like we were saying, it's just a thought. It does not have an inherent nature outside of the body.
Just like anything doesn't have an inherent nature, a belief doesn't either.
No, as you say, what happens to a thought when you don't think it? What happens to a belief when it's not believed? It has to have a host. It's like a virus that needs a host to survive. It is something which only exists by nature of somebody doing the action. The throwing of a ball only happens because somebody is throwing it. The belief in a belief only happens because someone is thinking that thought.
Yeah.
And the concept of anything does not exist outside of the conceptualization of it. It's an act of creation to believe a tree into existence. The thing is there. The thing has started as an acorn and grown and done its whole life thing, but our perception of what it is an interactive
and a very personal assumption.
Very personal assumption, because it's interactive in a way that is creating that tree for me.
Yeah.
It's not creating the tree for itself.
Or for the squirrel.
Or for the squirrel.
For you, the tree could be like creating oxygen, giving me apples, yum yum, and that's it for the squirrel.
Shade, making a lot of work when the trees fall down in the fall, when the leaves fall down in the fall. However we conceptualize it.
But for the squirrel, it's a home.
Yeah.
For the squirrel, it's a mean to transport. For the squirrel, it's something completely different.
Yeah. So we have to just look at the fact that the actual concept that we have does not exist outside of our belief or our thoughts about it. And that the labels, the Nutella that we put on everything does not have any inherent nature to itself either. There's nothing there that is, whether it's a plant, a car, a lava lamp, anything else. It's the concept that we put on it does not exist outside of our own use of that concept as a way of talking about this thing and its utility and our relationship to it.
So basically what we're saying with this third pointer is that whatever you believe because you've been taught to believe that. You need to question that. You need to question everything. Because whatever you believe it's not real. It's not what it actually is. It's just a belief. It's just a belief.
Yeah.
And it's not even yours.
No. And there's so much freedom in being able to just let go of those and actually interact with the world as you're seeing it in this moment.
Yeah.
Without any extra burdens of belief added onto it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to be belief free.
No.
The fourth one. Have compassion towards the concepts you create. I just want to stop there before I read the rest of it. Because everything we do, whenever you start to dissolve all this, do all of it with love and compassion. That whatever hooks you have into reality being in a certain way, or whatever life you have led until this moment when you start to realize it, have compassion. Be kind. Whenever you unhook something, be kind towards it. Do not judge yourself for anything. And if you in any way experience anybody judging any part, just know that it's not about you. That is them. So have compassion towards everything that you perceive and everything you perceive other people perceive. Compassion, compassion, compassion. So have compassion towards the concept you create. They all exist in relationship with or in comparison to other concepts that have no inherent reality either. And it's what we just talked about.
Yeah.
That nothing exists on its own. Nothing is on its own in any way. It's Nutella smeared, all of it. Everything is exists in comparison to something else, to another concept. So whatever concept you have, if you have a concept of there's a little kernel of an I that is the universe, that exists only because of other concepts around it that is making this seem solid. But you can look at every single of the other concepts, just like we did in the first Fetter when we dissolved the delusion of an I, that we started to pick apart all of the small concepts that made it feel like this solid I that is here is not here. Because it only exists because of all the other concepts. And we did the same in the second Fetter. With all of your underlying beliefs about fear, anger, guilt, and shame, with your toxic starting point, all of that, that only exists, this concept only exists because of other concepts that is holding it together. And when you start to pick those concepts apart, that dissolves. And that's why it's so important to be compassionate in the work that you do, having so much love to whatever is surfacing. Because whatever is surfacing is only a little kernel, a little concept that is held into place by other concepts around it. So be compassionate to every single concept that is around it and to the little kernel of a concept. And you don't need to rush about having all this dissolved within a certain time frame. That's just another concept that you just added to all the other concepts that is holding something together.
Oh, so nice.
Thank you.
Yeah, there was something that had popped up, and now I was just kind of enjoying that. Oh wow, yeah, I completely forgot what it was.
It might come back.
Yeah,
it might come back.
Right,
But-
let me just glance back at this, and I'll probably reboot. Oh yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Yay. So also in this, when we talk about that the concepts relate to of each other, recognizing that when we talk in the most stark and traditional terms about non-duality, we say things like the black creates the white and the good creates the bad. Every time we come down on the idea that we have this one concept about the way something is, we're defining the opposite.
Yeah.
We're creating the polar opposite of that thing.
Yeah.
So if I believe that this particular party is good, that means I inherently believe that the other one is bad, or vice versa. If I believe that that a tree is a certain way, I'm automatically creating all the ways that that tree is not. that tree is not going to stand up and walk out of the ground and walk across the yard or something.
And it's not short and stumpy. Then it's a bush.
It's a bush. Yeah, we're creating this idea that this concept, as soon as we create it, has in it inherently another or multiple other concepts that are all connected to it, and we have a hard time maybe getting recognizing that the one is there, and that one is causing our entire world of concepts around it. So that's why we say to very curiously and compassionately dissect all of this, because it's in the nature of a concept to create barriers. As soon as we outline that plant, we're outlining all the things that are not plant. This pernilla, all the things that are not pernilla. And like we talked about in the first one, all the ways that pernilla is allowed to be and not allowed to be. That she is supposed to be like this, and if she behaves otherwise, that's not pernilla. That's not being like you. That's very strange. And then I don't know where to stand in that relationship, because now I have created a concept of what pernilla is, and this has to have that feeling of like safety, that I know pernilla is always going to act this way in this situation. But again, there is no inherent pernilla. There is no guarantee that a pernilla is going to act in the same way in every situation all the time. And so there has to be that open acceptance moment to moment when we're interacting with people, to recognize how it's actually showing up, and that my concept of what pernilla is hasn't created this whole other world of restrictions and beliefs, and me now feeling confused and cheated and unsafe because you're not behaving the way that I expected you to behave in this moment.
Yeah, and then really, 4 or 5 feather it, and know that right now you have then projected something out there that is because of a feeling of unsafety or uncertainty here, and then you go to 4, 5, and you work with the lessons there about it. But it's a really, really good point that you have, that the moment you dissolve one concept, all other concepts around that will fall.
Yeah.
They have to fall. Because it's only that concept is only held together because of all the other concepts that you have around it. Yeah. So when one concept falls, the other will. When one concept, the sensor concept falls, all the other concepts fall too.
Yeah.
But it's basically that pointing at a tree and saying that is a flower.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, we are gonna make some fun videos. Was that it?
Yeah,
I just want to say compassion again. Just say the word.
I just like the word.
I like the word.
I think that's enough for that one.
Okay.
5th pointer. Form is created by the limitations of our understanding. All creation of form is self-referential.
Oh, love it.
So yeah, this is really good.
Love it.
I think we take these kind of in 2 parts too.
Yeah.
Form,
we actually have 20 pointers.
We have 20 pointers, yeah. Form is created by the limitations of our understanding. Going back to what we talked about before, that if I decide that plant is a plant, it's based on my creation of that plant extracted from the whole, is based on my limited understanding of what a plant is and how it interacts with the world. In truth, that plant doesn't exist without the sunlight that's in the coming through the window. So it needs a window, it needs the sun, it needs the air around it to be giving it the space for it to exist, but also everything that's interacting through the leaves. It needs
clean leaves for photosynthesis to happen. Yeah,
exactly. And it's constantly, it's creating oxygen that's going out into the air. So it needs the air, but it's also changing the constituency of the air. It needs the moisture that's in the air. It needs the moisture that's in the ground or the earth
soil,
that it's
bacteria in the
soil. It
soil.
needs the bacteria in the soil. There's this whole host of things that if I just look at it and say, well, that's a plant, I can just take that plant, extract it from this situation, put it into any other environment, and it's still going to be the same plant. It's not. That just doesn't work like that. That we can't extract the organism from the environment, as Alan Watts said. And so in this, we have to look at every time that we create something out of nothing, some form out of existence, we are selecting what it is that makes that we have we have a limited concept of the way that things actually are, and then we are enforcing upon it this limited sense of our own knowledge, assuming what this thing is, giving it our limited creation, our limited. It's not coming out as clearly as it is in the head,
No,
but
but
it's
yeah,
yeah,
we're giving it a life
Yeah.
which it doesn't have, which is based on our own creation of it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Based on the limitations of our understanding,
Yeah,
though.
because it's
So-
self-referential.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Which brings us to the second part of it, that how I relate to the plant and how I believe the plant to be is all based on my faulty assumptions of what that plant is, what it needs to survive, that it is a distinct element which can be moved within an environment. So anytime we create that sense of form, and we've talked about this a lot already with people, and that I create a pranilla every time I see you, and that is, there's an assumption there that is completely self-referential to how I assume this pranilla is going to be in any given situation, how that affects me, how it relates to me in my life and my situation, and how I should feel based on this pranilla that I'm creating. Never actually taking in the complete totality of the pranilla that's sitting there.
And that is what we're doing with the awakening, that you are completely removing that self-referential part that is in there, that is sitting in here looking out, sitting in here judging everything out there, sitting in here having an opinion about everything out there, being, miffed and angry when things are not going the way that this sitting in here wants it to be. That self-referential part is it's just a delusion. There is no center of everywhere, of anywhere, that can perceive anything out there and know the truth about anything. It's just one big joke, one big ruse that we believe in. And that self-referential part is what you need to question. That is such as something out of nothing that is created. Go on.
No, I was just going to say, again, we can't define anything. As soon as we start to define anything in our vicinity, we're creating form.
Yeah.
That's the creation of something out of nothing. And as long as we have any idea that this is a thing that I think it is, as long as we start creating any of those boundaries, we are putting on this false concept onto everything.
Yeah.
And it's always, as you said, going to be coming from that self-referential place.
Yeah.
It's all about my concepts of what I think it is, how it suits me or doesn't suit me, how it relates to me in some way.
And also, being self-referential is something out of nothing. Viewing something from here to there is something out of nothing. Thinking that I know what is something out of nothing. Everything about all of those concepts is something out of nothing. All that needs to go. It needs to go for you to really see clearly and be clearly. And it's being in that space, we're moving closer and closer to that in the lessons, is to be in that space where there's no thoughts about anything. There can be an experience, but it cannot be expressed. It cannot be talked about. The Tao can be told is not the eternal Tao. It cannot be told about. It cannot be talked about. It cannot be in any way expressed. It can only be experienced, but not by an experiencer. It's just an experience that is happening. That in the scene, it's simply the scene. There's no one seeing it. There's not seeing happening. There's nothing self-referential anywhere. That is something out of nothing. Okay.
I think that's good.
6-pointer. The narrative of our life and the conclusions we have drawn about our traumas, beliefs, and ways we see the world are overarching concepts attempting to summarize decades and trillions of thoughts into patterns that are easily expressed to others. And it's a little bit what we just talked about. That idea of someone being here, of everything being self-referential, that is based on decades of life where you were not even present in the moment. When you experience something, very, very rarely are we present in the moment. The majority of times we have thoughts about what is happening in the moment. And it is the thoughts about those thoughts that we then call a memory, that we keep repeating thoughts about the thoughts that we had, and then thoughts about the thoughts we just had about the thoughts we had. So it's just a repetition of a copy paste that has been copied so many times that a decade later, it doesn't even have the flavor of the original experience.
Yeah.
If you think of what happened in your life yesterday, the majority of things are completely forgotten. They're not even in your frame anymore because it does not exist. Yeah. What exists is the thoughts about the things that you thought happened. That still exists, which means it's not what actually happened. It's a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. And all of those...
9 Inch Nails song.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That was just a little drop there. And all of that is self-referential. All of that is self-referential. What was the point there? I forgot about it. The narrative of our lives and the conclusions we have drawn about our traumas, beliefs, and ways we see the world are overarching concept. It's the same with the traumas, as we also talked about in the 7th Fetter. And if there's still trauma work that needs to be done, back to the 2nd Fetter, work with it so you really... so you sit with the trauma, with the concept of the trauma, and then you start to notice all the concepts you have created around that concept. Mm-hmm. And then with lots of love and compassion, you start to dissolve all the small concepts around it, and it will end with this being dissolved as well.
To say, though, I think it's important to remember that we're not saying this as a way to just bypass the
that
2nd Fetter stuff.
Exactly the point. Exactly the point, that it needs to be felt. And it's always a very good rule of thumb. Bypassing is happening when we do not want to feel.
Yeah.
So if you feel, then you're probably not bypassing.
Yeah. And if you're taking on this concept that, oh, well, my traumas didn't actually exist. They're just memories that I'm having, thoughts, it's just a belief. You know, I've been holding on to this. And yeah, on one level, there's also truth to that. But if you're taking that on as just another concept and employing that as a belief to, as you say, keep from feeling, that you're not really deriving any benefit from that. Maybe in the moment you get this like moment of kind of delusional relief where you just feel like, oh, okay, it's fine. You're basically just talking yourself down. Didn't happen.
It's just another belief. Just another belief.
But it doesn't actually get you to come to the core of anything or to resolve anything. It's just there. It's just every time it shows up, you're just, I don't see you. So what we're inviting you to do is to compassionately, gently, go back, be curious, and work with these, in using the 2nd Fetter tools, to work with the issues that are there, but also having that lightness, like recognize, like keep this in the back of the mind that even when you're doing the in-depth trauma work and you're really feeling these emotions and feeling the sensations and you're there with it, you have that lightness that you know you're not actually back in the situation.
Yeah.
You're not actually experiencing what you've thought that you were experiencing. That your concept of what this sensation even isn't really, you've been relating to the concept of this terrifying sensation in the body that you've been running from for decades. You have a concept about what that means and how it's showing up and how it's completely untouchable and you can't go near it. So having these 7th Fetter pointers kind of in the back of the mind goes, no, okay, I know I'm going into what seems like a very scary house, but I know it's only Halloween. And I know that it's a haunted house, but it's not really haunted. You know,
Yeah.
people might jump out at me. I might get scared, but they're not real. They're not actually going to harm me in some way. So you can have it as that kind of like, okay, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, so that you can be compassionate in going towards these things, knowing that they're not really going to hurt you the way that you have expected them to. But it's not to just avoid the house altogether and say,
I really, really love that metaphor of all of those old traumas that we have, that it feels so real, but it's not, it's just Halloween. I really, really love that. That it's just make believe. It's just make believe. And it is safe to go into it. It is safe to feel it and be with it and look into it. And it's also what we do with the 7 feather exercise that we have. Really looking into it and really feeling it. Yeah.
So we still have to go into the haunted house, but it's having this as that little angel on your shoulder saying, you know, it's okay, it's okay.
And also because if you just go like, well, none of it is real, there's no one here, so I don't need to look at it. It is bypassing.
Yeah.
It is bypassing.
Literally bypassing the house.
You are creating so much something out of nothing when you do that. But I don't need to look at my past because it didn't really happen. Oh, sweetheart, you just created something out of nothing. If you cannot sit down and look at, abuse that happened, and you cannot look at horrendous things that you have experienced, and you cannot look at that, then you are creating something out of nothing by bypassing. And it will still be there. It's just living underneath all the carpets and all the surfaces, and you going, it's fine. It's just bypassing. It's just bypassing. It's emphasizing the I. It's emphasizing that self-referential experience. You're not as enlightened as you believe you are. You're deluding yourself. You're deluding yourself. If you cannot be with compassion and love for everything, you're deluding yourself. Yeah, so love and compassion. Was that all of it? Or was there more layers there?
No, it was just one very long sentence.
It was.
The narrative of our life and the conclusions we have drawn about our traumas, beliefs, and the ways we see the world are overarching concepts attempting to summarize decades and trillions of thoughts into patterns that are easily expressed to others.
Yeah.
I was going to say, even I have a kind of a personal, simple, fun version of this kind of idea. I've always felt that I hate the cold. And I remember years ago, after doing like 4th, 5th Fetter stuff, I was, walking and it was cold and I was bundled up. And the little thought popped up that I hate the cold. And then it just went, hold on a minute. It's cold out, right? But what in this moment do I actually not like? And it was like, it's fine. Like, there was nothing here that was warranting that, but there was this idea that historically, every time I'm in the cold, I go, I hate the cold.
Yeah.
And you're
the
creating,
sentence that tags along.
the sentence that tags along, and you're creating this idea that I am a person who likes the warmth. I am a person who does not like it when it's cold. And that we've created this idea of a person. We've created the idea of a person with certain limitations of what they like and they don't like, and what they can handle and what they can't handle. And it's based off of all of the years of not liking cold. But really, when you say that, how many instances actually come up out of all of those years? You probably have 1 or 2 memories of times that have come up when you were cold and uncomfortable. But you have had the concept that has ridden along this entire time that I am somebody who doesn't like the cold.
Yeah.
Well, test that out. Find out in this moment, does this biological organism react well in the cold? Maybe in this moment it doesn't. Maybe in this moment it does. But be free at it and not live your life through the conceptual limitations of, I just don't do that because I don't like this thing.
Yeah, it's very much about those beliefs that we hold about something. And in your direct experience, if it's cold and you are cold and it's freezing and it's very, very uncomfortable, really, really look into that moment right now. How much something out of nothing did you just create by saying that it's uncomfortable? Yeah. Are you sure? Are you absolutely sure that it's uncomfortable? Because uncomfortable can only exist in comparison with something else, which is not here right now. So what is here right now is absolutely bearable, no matter what situation you're in.
Yep, absolutely. So just as a sum it all up, I think, it's just remembering that anytime we start to define our life a certain way and think that it's been always been depressed, or I've always been a very happy, go lucky person, and
Is it?
that
Yeah, I think it is. I think it is.
that sounds weird coming all of a sudden. That was weird. Happy go lucky. Yeah, it was
you
one
said
word,
that.
but it came out in the mind as happy, comma, go lucky person, and I'm like, go lucky just doesn't sound right. Yes, always been a happy go lucky person. Always been, never been good at math. I've never been, these ideas
Never been
that we
good
have.
at constructing
Never been
sentences
good at
either.
constructing sentences. Always been completely incoherent. Whatever we have whatever we have as those ideas about what we take ourselves to be, look into the fact that they're not based on anything real in this moment. They're based on beliefs and isolated, cherry-picked memories of an entire lifetime that have then come to represent the totality. But it's so unfair to pick those couple little illustrative moments and say that this defines my entire existence.
Yeah.
So we're really asking you to just let all of that go and see what is actually showing up moment to moment, just as it is, without carrying the baggage of all of those concepts about how I have to be and who I am and what my life has been like. And I'm defined this way because of this, and this. All of that goes, and you're just simply this manifestation.
Yeah. Love it.
Okay.
Love it.
Okay, 7th pointer. Every concept that we believe we understand, even I don't know anything, ignorance, wisdom, awakening, or something out of nothing, are just a new belief in another concept. So we absolutely have to let go of everything.
Yeah.
And even, I was going to mention it earlier, but I forgot that it was actually in the pointer, so now I'm glad I didn't. That even when you're doing the awakening curriculum and you're picking up all of these new concepts and the idea of something out of nothing, as soon as you latch onto those things, you're creating more concepts. You're creating more of something. They're there as pointers. They're there as tools to steer you in a certain direction so you can see something for yourself. But after that, like the raft, you have to let all of it go.
Yeah.
It's not about filling up your backpack with as many new concepts and understandings and beliefs and philosophies and logical ways of defining existence and all of that. It's just simply there to point you in a certain direction, and once you're there, you just drop it.
And it's also why you have experience throughout the curriculum, if you started by the first and you work through all of them, that there were some concepts that was created. For example, that we say that reality is when you, not what you think, but you just sit in the moment and you have a very clear sensory experience. So let's say that you have a feeling or an emotion about fear or shame or guilt. That is a thought attached to a sensory experience. And we did lots of exercises with you where you just sit and you breathe and you let the feeling of shame or guilt or fear be as big as possible. And then you detach the thought and you just sit with the sensory experience and you allow it to be. And that is reality. That what you feel in your sensory experience right now, the contraction in the stomach, all of that is reality. That was a concept we created for you to become aware of what is thought and what is actually in my direct experience. Even that has to drop. Even that has to drop. And that is where we're moving into with the higher fetters now. Yeah. So all the concepts that was created for you in the curriculum was meant as a raft for you to get to the other shore. Leave the raft and move on. There will be another river, there will be another raft, and then you just use the raft to cross to the other shore and you leave it be and move on.
Yeah, exactly. It's also the other old metaphor of using a thorn to remove another thorn. It's useful to use concepts sometimes, but ultimately we can't hold on to them. They're just temporary tools for getting through a certain barrier, understanding correcting some other misunderstanding, but it's not to then latch on to the new understanding
and create a new
create
belief.
a new belief out of it, so that you then have to use another tool to get rid of that understanding.
Yeah.
That can become an infinite cycle of seeking, where you're constantly looking to undo the misapprehensions or the learnings that you just got bound into.
All concepts and all beliefs needs to drop,
including what we said about wisdom versus ignorance versus awakening. Even coming into doing this work with the idea that you know what awakening is going to be. I'm doing it for this purpose, where I'm going to, become like that, whatever that happens to be in your own personal belief system. It's recognizing that you're striving to fulfill a concept. You have an idea of what it's going to look like. You have expectations. You are moving towards those.
You're
what
definitely not there yet.
No, because
but
it doesn't fulfill your expectations.
Exactly.
And you run the risk of never having it fulfill those expectations, because
it's
you're always
plus one game.
It is, and you're always basing it off of what you hear other people describing based on their own personal
what
system.
you think is their personal experience. Yeah. So whenever you hear somebody talking about that, it's like it's psychedelic and it's magic and it's all of that, what you hear they say is what you hear. Yeah. It's not what they experience, because like we just said before, that awakening can only be experienced. You cannot talk about it. No matter which word you add to it, you have just minimized the experience. It's not that. Yeah. It's not that. So no matter what thought you have about what you think other people experience, or what you think awakening is, or wisdom is, or anything, the first thought that can come is, it's not that. Yeah. It's not that. All those beliefs and all those concepts needs to drop, because it's not that.
And it's not that because at the core there is no such thing as awakening. There is no such thing as a tree. It's that same idea that as long as we are creating something out of nothing, we're creating our concept of what a thing is. And even to say that an awakened life looks different from an unawakened life is setting up these assumptions, and it's setting up constrictions, and we're defining this is what life looks like before this event or this understanding unfolds, and then this is what it looks like after. And there is so much selective culling and conforming that we're doing to each of those, that it's not taking in the entire picture.
And all of those coloring and conforming that you do are based on your conditions. Yeah. That's why it's different for everybody that is understanding it. Yeah. But it is really, what I think it's the slogan for the curriculum in the beginning. I don't even know if I have it anymore. But that's part about that, that everything is different, but nothing has changed. It's really, really understanding that nothing will change. Nothing will change. Everything will stay the same, because it's not supposed to change. But nothing will change. But everything is different, because the way that you view it is now without beliefs and without concepts, without self-referential eye looking out to what it is, without any kind of judgment, without any kind of assumptions. All of that is gone.
Yeah, so ultimately, anytime you get locked into any concept, whether you're thinking about
even what I just said, that everything is gone, careful that is not becoming a new concept.
Yeah, exactly. That as soon as you latch on to any expectations of what something is or should be, how it's going to be in the future, how I am, how they are, how it is, anything that smacks of any of that, you can just drop in that moment and try to be as direct experience, pure, unfiltered experience as you can.
Yeah.
And that's as close as we can to being able to see anything as it is, And you'll never be able to cross that final barrier.
Because it can't be said. The moment it's said, we're minimizing the experience, and we're not doing it justice at all, because no words can be used to describing it.
No. And we don't have any access to, and we've talked about this in the sixth fetter a lot, we don't have access to the actual world outside of our limited sense perceptions of them. And so anytime we talk about anything, we are talking about something that doesn't exist the way we think it exists, and then doubly awful, we're putting our own concepts on top of it and taking something that doesn't even exist the way we think it does, and then conforming that into an even smaller box of its own non-actuality than it was to begin with. So we're just taking delusion and stacking it on top of delusion on top of delusion.
Yeah.
So we're basically coming down to the least deluded way that we can be in existence, while still inevitably having some level of base delusion there that is just beyond our capacity as biological creatures to get beyond.
Love it.
All right?
Okay. 8.
8.
I want to do 8.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Another long one.
Yeah. Stories have a limited utility for accessing trauma, but the emotional pain is real because it is a metaphor for something that is happening now. When you have created a space for what is, met it with compassion and kindness, you can see through it all. So we have another multi-leveled one that we made into one pointer. But what we are pointing at is, first of all, that if I ask you, tell me about your childhood, and you start to talk about it, that is stories. And it's stories that are not relevant in the sense of that none of those stories that you talk about actually happened.
No.
They're stories that you have created to convey an experience that you had at a very early point where you might have been nonverbal, or you might have been very limited in your expression. So you created a story about a sensory experience that you had. So the stories are not the trauma. They're not conveying the trauma. They are a little fairy tale about a trauma that happened. But the stories are important because they are pointing as a metaphor to something that needs your love and compassion. So if Janice says something to you and you get really shameful, or you feel guilty, or something like that, it's the story that you have created about Janice made me feel guilty and shameful. That is a story. That is not true. Janice didn't do anything. Janice said something that you took as something that is shameful and you should feel guilty about. That feeling is pointing to a trauma that needs your compassion. It's not now. It's not now. Long ago, something happened. A trauma happened that you have not been with. You have judged it in a way. You have packed it away. You didn't want to look at it. You couldn't look at it. You didn't have the capacity to look at it. Whatever. Now when Janice says what she does and you feel shameful and guilty, that is the opportunity for you to create space to you feeling shameful and you feeling guilty. You're not shameful, you're not guilty. But that feeling that is happening in you is what needs space and compassion. Can you be in a body that feels guilty? Can you be in a body that is full of shame? And it's a yes or no, as we have talked about multiple times. So when you create that space for you sitting with shame, and you just close your eyes and you breathe into it, you feel that shame on its own is not a thing. It's a thought. There's a sensory experience in the body and there's a thought attached to it. When you detach the thought, there's just a sensory experience in the body, which is not going to stick. It's not going to maintain on its own. It can only be maintained with more thoughts about it. So when you sit with shame and guilt, it's a sensory experience in the body. There might be fluttering, there might be contraction, there might be lots of things. You do not add more thoughts to it. You just sit and experience what is happening and it will dissolve. And that is that. Next time Janice says something and you feel guilty and you feel shameful, you know the routine. You know how to sit with it. You know it's not about Janice, it's not about your past, it's about right now. There is something coming up in you that needs your love and compassion and kindness. And that is what you create space for over and over and over right now. It's not about the past and it's not about them.
That was so good. I'm not sure I have anything to add to that. That was
I actually
fantastic.
thank you. I actually think there's more parts to this
Oh,
point.
are they?
Yeah, I think so.
Stories have a limited utility for accessing trauma,
Yeah.
but the emotional pain.
Can we just pause there? No, don't apologize, because it's just to say again, if you are one of those people that keep repeating, I had a terrible childhood, I had a terrible childhood, I had a terrible childhood, I had a terrible childhood. If you keep repeating that, you're telling a story.
Mm-hmm.
You're not doing what that story is asking you to do right now. That feeling in the body is begging you to feel it, not to tell another story.
Yeah.
It's not about the story.
No.
It's about right now. You need to create love, compassion, and kindness towards something in you that is contracting. And that is why the stories have a limited utility for accessing the trauma. Because you're talking about the story, you're not dealing with the trauma.
Right.
Okay, go on.
But they are, as you said, useful for pointing you back to something that needs your attention and your love and your work.
Now.
But yeah.
Yeah. But the emotional pain is real. So the contraction that you feel in the body and the shame that you feel right now, that's real. The guilt you feel right now, that's real. Now.
Yeah.
Now. Not in the story.
No.
Not in the trauma, but now. Because it's a metaphor for something that is happening now. When you have created space for what is right now. Yes.
So the idea that the emotional pain is real because it is a metaphor for something that is happening now is so important, because it's reminding you again that it's whatever is happening in this moment is just an echo of that thing. It's pushing a button that's been there, and that's it. And it's just being able to parse out the fact that the way that I'm feeling right now doesn't actually have to do with this situation.
Yeah.
And it's not because I'm back in that situation 40, 50 years ago.
True.
It's because there is what feels like a button, but it's really just this similar reaction that comes up anytime you're in a certain situation that has a certain characteristic to it. And so being in that situation, in that instant, with that characteristic, how you are interpreting another person's behavior, how you are feeling the vibe of the room, how you are seeing the light coming through the window and it's triggering a memory of something else that happened. It can be the most subtle and inconspicuous things that, again, to other people in that room have no relevance. So the situation might not be something which is inherently trauma-inducing or triggering for somebody else, but because of the conditioning that has happened, there is something where in this particular situation, this sensation arises. Every time I'm in a room where the light comes through the window this certain way, I get the same sensation in the body. It doesn't mean that you have to avoid the room or the light at certain times of day. Just as asking, and it's not calling for you to revisit the story of why that reminds me of this time.
Because it's not representative of the trauma.
No, it has nothing to do with that. It's just a story. It's just every time you are in a room with light coming through the window a certain way, a sensation arises in the body. Can you then be with that sensation?
Yeah.
And then do the work that you've been talking about?
Yeah. When you have created space for what is right now, met it with compassion and kindness right now, you can see through it all. You no longer need the stories. And that's the whole point. That all the stories you have about the trauma, you only maintain the stories because there's something that still needs your love, compassion, and kindness. The moment you have given that now to the experience in the body right now, the memory of the trauma will fade. Your entire outlook on your childhood will change because you don't need the stories anymore. The trauma that happened has been healed. So you don't need to maintain the stories about, I had a horrendous childhood, absolutely horrendous. You don't need to maintain that story anymore because the need is not there anymore. It has been met. So when you have stories about absolutely horrendous dysfunctional childhood, then there's still work to do. The moment you can drop that because it has been healed, and when somebody asks, so how was your childhood? I think it was amazing, like any other childhood actually. And there's no longer any story connected to it. There's no longer anything in you about it when you say that. But it's just, it has dropped. Yeah. Then all stories are gone.
Yeah.
And then everything has been met with love, compassion, and kindness. 9.
All right. 9th. Here's a biggie.
Another biggie.
Another biggie. Time does not exist the way that we experience it. Without accessing memory or imagining the future, there is no way to tell that time is passing. Everything is happening now in your mind and can be healed now in your mind.
Yes.
So
Yes. Oh,
it keeps. We've been hinting at this going through and talking about it in different ways, but yeah, time does not exist the way that we experience it. We can't say how it is. We can't say what it is, how any of it is happening. We just know that it's not the way that we currently experience it in our semi-linear way of being. You know, we are constantly using memory and projections of a future to center us in the present. It's like, I know I'm here now only because I can remember the past and I know it's not then. And I can think of all of these possibilities that could happen in the future and what it's going to look like when I'm 80 years old and I'm not there now. So I must be present now. But it's always in relation to that past and the future. We're always defining now only by those concepts. And what we neglect to do is to recognize that even while we are in this moment now, we are very often completely polluting this moment with thoughts and memories and projections about the past and the future. So we're very rarely ever actually in the present moment. We're always looking at it as, this reminds me of that time when that happened. This is, I'm doing this right now so that I will have a better outcome in the future. I'm doing this for the purpose of getting something in the future. We're rarely just experiencing and enjoying the present moment as it is for no other ulterior motive and without any baggage where I enjoy this piece of pie because it reminds me of my grandmother's pie. Maybe it's just a tasty piece of pie now, or maybe it's not even that tasty. Maybe it's only tasty because it brings up associations with your grandmother's pie that has such fond memories for you. It's really about being right in the moment and experiencing things as they are without the baggage of the past and without but I also can't enjoy this pie now because I'm going to be 5 pounds heavier in the future because I've eaten this piece of pie. We create everything based around the past and the future. And what we really want to recognize is that if you're just here now, without intentionally going forward or backwards in our mental time, we can't actually tell how fast or if time is actually moving. We have the idea that, we hear all the time, time moves faster the older we get. But when they do those studies, it's not really that time is moving faster. Obviously, we're not, we're on a planet where people are everywhere from a minute old to 100+ years old. Time is not like, parts of the world are not moving really fast and other parts are moving really slowly because somebody in this room is older than another. Our perception of time changes based on our memory mostly, because what they say is that usually our perception of time, of how far in the past something has been, is based on specific key highlights that pop up in memory. And so when we're children, we tend to have a lot of new novel things that we're experiencing, and each one of those is like a new highlight. And so summer vacation when we're a kid can seem like it lasts for years, because it's like there's been so much new stuff and there's so much excitement and so much like in the moment novelty. And as we get older, we tend to get into these routines. We have these patterns where it's the same thing every day. Every weekday looks basically the same. And then maybe a weekend, you do something a little bit different, and then it's right back to the week. And so we only have these few little highlights every now and then. And so then we look back and it's like 6 months feels like it's been 2 weeks. But the key point here is that when they do these studies, the perception of time passing in the moment is always the same, no matter what age we are. It's our retrospective looking back at it that makes it feel like more time has passed in the past, or less time that has changed. So
also just percentage wise, when you're 4,
Yeah, that's
you haven't
also-
got that many percentage of
Yeah.
life in comparison with this
Also
minute.
true.
When you're 40, you have more percentage wise
Absolutely
left.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the takeaway is that when we are just present in the moment and not looking back, doing a cataloging of the past and how long ago I think this event was, or projecting into the future, our actual present moment is indefinable. It's not, it does not really seem to pass. Time doesn't feel like it exists when we are just sitting here being. It's only when we feel like we're doing something because we're on a deadline, or because I'm accessing memory in some way to say that this moment is different from the moment that just passed. That, even right, well, I was going to say, even if you just sit right now for a moment and allow the body to settle down, and allow the mind to come resting as much as possible so that you're out of thought. Find a place in the body where you can tune into and just feel the sensation in the body. Maybe the butt on the chair, feet on the floor. And open your eyes and see the room around you. Most likely, there isn't a lot of action happening in the room. Most likely, things feel fairly stable and in a sort of stasis. But what I'd like you to notice is, if you focus your eyes straight ahead, just very gentle. You don't have to look at anything in particular, just a gentle gaze. And then turn your head to the left. And just again, gentle gaze there. Do you notice that there was a very quick memory that flashed of what was there when your eyes were facing forward, and a change that now is referencing, oh, this vision is different. This visual experience is different from what was here a moment ago. And that memory of what was just there compared to what's here now gives us that illusion of time passing, that it was there and now it's not, something else is here. And so try it again. Take another moment to just do that again. Focus maybe straight ahead. And then this time, turn your gaze to the right. And just notice that there is a feeling that something has changed, something has moved. So there's an implication, I am different now than I was then. There is something that was looking straight ahead, and now it's looking this direction instead. The world is different, I am different, time has passed. And there's an assumption based off of that. And it's, again, being created by memory. If you had absolutely no sense of memory, all you would ever see is what is right here, right now, in your view, and there would be no concept that time had passed, because nothing would seem to be changing, because we can only assume that change is happening based on comparisons to memories of what has just been, and to, again, presumed assumptions that eventually I'm going to stand up off of this couch and then things are going to be different, and I'm going to eat and then things are going to be different, and I'm going to go outside and things are going to be different, and I can catalog that and say time has passed and it's took an hour for me to do this and a half hour for that, and then we break up the experience into those segments. But the actual experience of all of it, of standing, of walking, of talking, of eating, of going outside, of being in the sun, without appealing to the memory or thoughts about the future, the actual perception of that seems timeless.
Yeah, love it. Love it. Yeah, it's that delusion that we have of time being horizontal, that there's a past and there's a present where we are right now, and then there's a future. And what we are doing when we're in the seventh fetter is that we are making it vertical, that there is just now. And everything that you think was in the past is happening right now in your mind. Whatever you think is going to happen in a moment in the future, it's happening right now in your mind. There is only this. It's like individual snapshots of what is present right now. Like if you look at, like we just did, if you look at somewhere in the room where there's no movement, like Toddy said, it's like there's this stasis in what you're looking at. And what you're sitting and looking at, if you're not adding any thought to it, how do you know time is passing? It's a solid painting on the wall. It's a solid sofa. It's a solid... How do you know time is passing? You have no reference to that. Because in the vertical, in right now, there is just now. And in that, no time is passing.
No.
There is just this. And it's also, if I'm just and it's also when we're talking about that this moment does not need anything. That is it. There is just that. And in this moment, it's perfect as it is. There's nothing that needs to happen because it can't. It's just this moment. There's nothing that needs to be any different because it is as it is. And in that snapshot of a moment that is happening right now, there is an experience. There's not an experiencer, and there's nothing that you can talk about in this moment right now, partly because the moment will be gone when you start to open your mouth, but also because that in this moment right now, there's just silence. There's stillness, simplicity, and contentment. There's just silence. There's a purity and an innocence and a I don't like the word innocent, but a purity to this moment right now, where nothing needs to change and nothing needs to happen, and that is the awakening. So it's an experience that is now, and all the nows in between the nows are set, because it's a snapshot of this.
That's wonderful. I was just going to point, in case anybody who was doing this while you're looking at the stationary wall in front of you and nothing seems to be changing, if there's still a part of you that's saying, yes, but it still feels like time is passing, I just wanted to direct you, look particularly into the body. Look for feelings of heartbeat, of blood moving, of breathing, and notice if some of the sensations that you're feeling are still adding to that illusion that time is passing. Because again, if you were truly present in the moment with no memory, you actually couldn't tell whether one heartbeat was the only thing that you have ever had in your life. One could be the entire existence, and one is the entire existence.
It's exactly what I just meant with the snapshot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I want you to also be aware that the sensations in the body are often giving us cues that time is passing. That I can feel this heartbeat, and I remember it's different from the past heartbeat. That I can feel the lungs expanding, and that is contrasted against when the lungs have
But then there's a comparison with something else than in this moment. It's really good to point at that, because a lot of times we have those very subtle feelings in the body that we're not really aware of that we're feeling. But those are the ones that are letting us to believe that things are in a certain way. You know, I am here because my eyes look out from here, so I must be here.
Yeah, and
not there.
And I can feel them moving, so I know there's tension in there, and I can feel, the musculature around the eyes. So clearly, I am the one moving my eyes because I can feel.
And clearly, there's a self-referential me right here because I'm looking out right here.
Absolutely.
But without any thoughts or without any beliefs about that, there's just a very pure snapshot.
Yes.
Where there's not even a sensory experience of anything, because it's too fleeting.
Yeah.
For you to be able to have a sensory experience about anything.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wonderful. All right,
last one. Yay!
Woo!
I actually think we had about 20 or 30,
I
but
know.
let's just call it 10.
10.
There's no way to grasp or understand what anything actually is. The pure experience is non-conceptual and results in inexpressible silence. Nothing can be spoken about or understood with the mind.
So I think we just have to sit here quietly for the next 10
I was
minutes.
just thinking the same, that if you think that you understand this, you haven't. Isn't that about it?
It really is. We've pointed to this a lot so far, but I think effectively that is the point. That it's not allowing to get caught into any side of any sort of conceptual duality.
Not grasping at anything where you can say that, I get it. No, you don't. No, you don't. You just proved that you didn't. There is so much wisdom in that something out of nothing. Really, really becoming aware of how much something out of nothing is created. And even that has to drop. Even that has to drop. So there's no way to understand anything we're saying, anything we're pointing to. You cannot understand it with your mind. You cannot even have a clear experience and talk about it, because then it's made into mind again. So really, there is just that silence.
I was going to say that the best that any of these concepts can be, a funny metaphor, but okay, two related metaphors, because
I can hear the hole you're digging, babe.
I know.
Yeah. Plop.
God, they're so not good.
Yeah,
but,
go on.
Okay.
Go on.
If you've ever been bowling with children, a lot of times they'll have these inflatable bumpers that go down so that you can't throw a gutter ball. And so you throw the ball.
You have that here?
Yeah. So the gutters will be inflated, and then the ball will bounce off one side and bounce off the other, and then it eventually makes its way to the pins with very little velocity at the end, and it might go and knock over a pin. but the idea that there's no way to gutter it, and it's just constantly keeping you directed one way or another. Or I was thinking the other one
That's actually a really good metaphor.
Thank you. The other one was a pinball machine where you have all these little bumpers, and the ball just bounces from one to another, and it's kind of on one trajectory, but it's not that the ball is picking up anything from any of those bumpers. It's not that it's grasping something and now it's stuck to this bumper, and now it's going to take what it learned from this one and go to this one. It's just pinging you back and forth in one direction, heading towards one direction, but it might be very circuitous. It might be very zigzaggy. It can be all over the place. But these pointers are just there to kind of guardrail you, to keep you heading towards a certain understanding or a certain insight. But beyond that, you're not supposed to attach anything to it or grasp onto it or collect it or any of that. And then once you've passed that bumper, you're just on to the next thing. Next bumper comes, on to the next thing.
Yeah, and eventually you will end in the same spot.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but
I like that metaphor.
Thank you. but it's really...
it's also the next part of that that the pure experience is non-conceptual and results in inexpressible silence.
Yeah.
It is really that not taking any of the pointers that are given on the way down in the pinball machine, taking any of the pointers as truth or as a concept or as a belief, but just like, ooh, this is the direction of it.
Yeah.
And it is ending up in a space where you cannot use any words in describing what it is, because it is inexpressible. You cannot describe it with any words. It is an experience that is not experienced by anyone. It's just a very, very pure experience. And it is just stillness, simplicity, and contentment. There's just that silence there.
And as soon as you have the urge to verbalize something, you have to look into why it is that you want to try to describe it.
Yeah.
There's an idea there of still grasping that I need to be able to define this thing. And as soon as we've defined it, duality is created.
Yeah.
That's why ultimately we say, the Buddha said there was no, he didn't say, there's no self, but no self is just an antidote to self. And so you can't get caught in either polarity. There's neither no self nor not no self. That's a lot of negatives. So there's neither self nor no self. Neither awakening nor non-awakening. It's that idea that samsara is not different from nirvana. It's as soon as we come down on one side of anything, we've created a duality. If you feel like awakening is better than non-awakening, you've created a polarization there, and you're being trapped by the idea that this is not okay. I need that other conceptual thing, which does not exist, especially not the way that you conceptualize it.
And it's also why, if we go back to the second fetter, that when whatever underlying belief that you have of fear and guilt and shame, and you have that, but if I only didn't have this feeling of shame, everything would be good. That you will hear us over and over and over in the inquiry groups and in the Q&As that we have, that we keep pointing out what is wrong with feeling shame. What is it that's wrong about it? If you believe that feeling shame is bad and not feeling shame is good, you have created a concept. There's nothing wrong with feeling shame right now. There's a metaphor, a present right now that needs compassion, love, and kindness. That's it. There's nothing bad about it. There's not anything that should go away at all. There's,
Yeah. So just be on the lookout for any need to grasp at or to change or to categorize or conceptualize anything. And then feel into what would happen if you just drop that for a moment. Is there resistance to that? Does it feel like there's a fear in not being able to define and confine things to a certain, in a certain way where you have that comfort of knowing what it is? I know how that person is and how they're going to behave. I know how that person is and how they're going to behave, so I'm going to stay away from them. I know...
I am going to.
Yeah, I am going to. It's all self-referential, but it's all for that sake of feeling that either comfort or knowledge or egoic gratification of knowing that I can define the way that the planets move and I can define the way that, the chemistry behind whatever. It's not to say that it's not super interesting and on a relative level filled with all, science is wonderful and it gives us lots of fun, gives us lots of technological innovations. Not, it's not to dismiss any of that on the relative level, but on the ultimate level, we have to look at what we actually feel like we are getting out of this need to know something and this need to be able to categorize and understand and grasp and hold on to concepts.
Yeah.
And that's where it can really pull us down into all sorts of identification.
Yeah. And that's the last part of it. Nothing can be spoken about or understood with the mind.
No.
Yeah. And then there's just silence. I think that was it.
I think so.
So really notice how much something out of nothing is happening all the time. and is creating beliefs and concepts all the time. And even that, it has to drop. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.
Okay.
Go.
Okay.